It was December 23, 2023, just 2 days before Christmas, in the quiet suburban city of Friendswood, Texas. Families were decorating trees, wrapping presents, and preparing for holiday dinners. But inside one home on La Salle Street, the night would turn into a tragedy so haunting that it shook the entire community. 17-year-old Connor Hilton had invited friends over that evening. On the surface, it seemed like a typical gathering of teenagers during the holiday break. But what would follow was anything but ordinary. According to investigators, Hilton had been harboring dark thoughts for a long time. He admitted later that he had wanted to commit a homicide for years. That night, he acted on those urges, turning what should have been an innocent gathering into a crime scene that still leaves many asking why. The events unfolded quickly. Among the friends present were 18-year-old Ethan Riley and Benjamin, often called Ben, Bleak. At some point during the evening, Hilton retrieved a firearm that he had convinced his mother to buy for him. Moments later, he shot both Ethan and Ben in the head. The scene was pure chaos. Another teen, realizing what had just happened, ran and locked himself in the bathroom. Terrified, he dialed 911, whispering to the dispatcher as he barricaded the door. While hiding, he reported hearing 2 gunshots ring out. As he waited in silence, he later recalled hearing Hilton walk past the bathroom, sobbing and muttering to himself, "What have I done?" Police officers rushed to the home after the desperate 911 call. When they arrived, they found Ethan Riley fatally wounded and Ben Bleak clinging to life on the floor. Both had been shot execution-style in the head. Hilton, standing nearby, didn't deny it. He confessed to the shootings almost immediately. From the very beginning, this case stood out for its disturbing revelations. During questioning, Hilton told authorities he had long fantasized about committing murder. He explained that these weren't sudden impulses, but dark thoughts he had carried for years. Chillingly, he had even persuaded his own mother to purchase the gun he used, a weapon he claimed he had been waiting to use. Prosecutors wasted no time charging him. Although he was only 17 at the time of the killings, he was charged as an adult with murder for the death of Ethan Riley and aggravated assault for the attempted murder of Ben Bleak. As word spread across Friendswood, a town known for its quiet neighborhoods and family-friendly charm, the shock was palpable. Parents, neighbors, and classmates struggled to comprehend how a teenager from their own community could carry out such a calculated act of violence. Initially, Hilton was granted a $1 million bond, which his family managed to post. But as Ethan's condition deteriorated and he ultimately succumbed to his injuries, Hilton was rearrested and his charges escalated to murder. This only deepened the outrage in the community. As the legal process moved forward, Hilton's defense team began to shape an unusual strategy. They argued that Hilton had been prescribed high doses of Accutane, a powerful acne medication known generically as isotretinoin. The defense planned to argue that the medication had triggered a psychotic break that contributed to the shootings. Expert witnesses were prepared to testify that the drug's side effects included severe mental disturbances, ranging from depression to suicidal ideation, and in rare cases, violent outbursts. However, Galveston County Judge Rebecca Millo rejected this defense strategy before trial. She ruled that the Accutane argument could not be used to argue Hilton's innocence or reduce his criminal responsibility, though it might still be considered later as a mitigating factor during sentencing or on appeal. As the trial date approached, tension mounted. Prosecutors were prepared to present Hilton's own words, his admission that he had long fantasized about homicide, as evidence of premeditation. They argued that this was not a crime of sudden passion or confusion but a deliberate act carried out by someone who had thought about it for years. The defense faced an uphill battle. Then, in early September 2025, just days before jury selection was scheduled to begin, Hilton made a pivotal decision. Rather than go to trial, he chose to plead guilty to both murder and aggravated assault. In doing so, he avoided the uncertainty of a trial and spared the victims' families from the emotional burden of reliving the night in a courtroom. His attorney, Rick DiToto, later said Hilton's decision was driven by remorse and a desire not to inflict further pain on the families. The plea deal resulted in Hilton being sentenced to 50 years in prison for murder and 20 years for aggravated assault. The sentences will run concurrently, meaning he will serve them at the same time rather than back-to-back. Under Texas law, he will be eligible for parole after 25 years. That means Hilton, who was only 17 when he committed the crime, could still be a relatively young man when he has the chance to face a parole board. For the families of Ethan Riley and Ben Bleek, however, 25 years feels like both an eternity and yet not nearly long enough. During the sentencing hearing, emotions ran high. Ben Bleek, the surviving victim, confronted Hilton directly. His words were searing and unforgettable. He told Hilton, "Stop sniveling. Stop crying. You did this to yourself. The grief you've caused, I will never forgive." It was the voice of a young man who had barely survived and would now carry the trauma with him forever. Ethan Riley's father also addressed the court, painting a picture of who his son had been. He described Ethan as a beautiful soul, a light that will continue to overcome the darkness of your evil thoughts and actions. His words captured the devastating loss of a young life full of promise, extinguished in an instant by senseless violence. Even members of law enforcement weighed in. Friendswood police officials stated that while justice had technically been served, there were no true winners. A young man was dead, another scarred for life, and yet another, Hilton himself, would now spend decades behind bars. For the community, the case left haunting questions. How could a teenager plan such violence without anyone knowing? Could it have been prevented? Did mental health or medication play any role? Or was this simply the manifestation of a darkness Hilton had carried within him for years? Those questions may never be fully answered. What is clear is that December 23, 2023, will forever be remembered in Friendswood as the night innocence was shattered. Hilton's attorney continues to maintain that his client is deeply remorseful and that his guilty plea was meant to spare everyone more pain. But remorse cannot undo what happened that night. For Ethan Riley's family, no sentence will ever bring back their son. For Ben Bleek, no prison term will erase the scars, both physical and emotional, of surviving an attempt on his life. And for the Friendswood community, the shadows of that holiday season remain. In the end, the story of Connor Hilton is not just about a crime. It's about the devastating ripple effect of violence. A young man who said he had wanted to commit murder for years finally acted on that impulse. The consequences were catastrophic. Today, Hilton sits in a prison cell serving a 50-year sentence, with the possibility of parole in 25. But the real sentence is carried by the families of Ethan Riley and Ben Bleek, whose lives will never return to what they were before that night. It is a chilling reminder that behind every headline is a story of pain, loss, and lives forever changed. The story of Connor Hilton is a stark reminder of how quickly lives can be destroyed. If you want to continue exploring cases like this, where truth and tragedy collide, subscribe to Crime Deconstructed. Each video dives deep into the facts, the people, and the lasting impact of these crimes. Join our growing community and never miss an episode.